Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06. Happy Christmas Eve. Although, if you're British, this is actually Boxing Day Eve, Patrice Onwuka.
That's right, yes. Well, as an islander, we celebrated Boxing Day in the Caribbean, yes.
You're former colonist, you're former subject to the crown.
Yes, I broke free.
You got wise. You had your own little personal revolution. But yeah, so if you really want to keep the Eve thing going, it's Christmas Eve, Boxing Day Eve, and New Year's Eve. I'm done with that. All right, coming up this morning at 7:35, Trevor Matich on the Command Skins' absolute miracle victory against the Eagles at home yesterday. Boy, oh boy, the NFC East is looking fun right now if you're a Commanders fan. 8:35, Susan Ferriccio on how things shook down there with the continuing resolution, government shutdown avoided, and now what's this new Congress going to look like coming up first week of January. That's all coming up. That's Patrice Onwuka. This is Larry O'Connor, and we're joined by, he's sort of Santa to a lot of people. I'm sure he's already had his Feast of the Seven Fishes. He is the one and only Joe Digenova, former U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia. Do you do the Feast of the Seven Fishes there, Joe?
Absolutely. We'll be doing it in the next day or so. We have our night before Christmas Feast of the Seven Fishes.
One day I'm going to angle a invite to that table, although I'm usually in Oklahoma for the Christmas season, so it'll be worth annoying my in-laws if that means sitting and watching that feast go on. Joe, couple things that are sort of floating to the top of the agenda, I think. First, I don't know if you saw the John Fetterman interview yesterday. We talked about it, and one of the things of note is that he seems very open to the idea of Kash Patel being FBI director. And boy, what a journey Patel's nomination has gone through for the last 2 or 3 weeks, because right now it appears there's not much opposition. It looks like he's going to sail in, or are we waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Well, I think he probably has a pretty good chance of being confirmed. I think what happened is when there was that, and I think Joni Ernst kind of created a way for Patel when she and several others, although she was the most obvious one, created this potential opposition to Pete Hegseth and got roasted, just got absolutely roasted by the people who said, by the way, in case you missed it, there was an election and Trump won. It's one thing to talk about the Senate prerogative of advice and consent. It's another thing to wield it as a cudgel as if you won the election when, in fact, you didn't. Senators didn't win any election. Trump won them all, whether they like it or not. They can talk about how independent they are and where they are in their states and all this crap. And so Ernst sort of stood out as a really sore thumb. And I thought she got crushed deservedly so, pretty badly. And I think she helped not only Hegseth, but Patel in that. I think he'll probably be confirmed.
I think you're right, yeah.
So, Joe, speaking of unelected officials trying to wield their power, there was an interesting op-ed this weekend in Politico from Max Stier, the president and CEO of the Partnership for Public Service. I guess he was an attorney for Bill Clinton and Brett Kavanaugh accuser, who in essence said, listen, all you public civil servants, you must resist the Trump administration agenda by all means and work as much as you can to undermine everything that President Trump is going to try and do. Is that going to be effective, and how much power do you think these civil servants will really wield this time around?
The civil servants will have as much power as the president and the attorney general allow them to have. These people should be crushed. Make no doubt about it. Mr. Steyer should get a subpoena very, very quickly for all of his records, who he's been communicating with, whether or not he's been in communication with labor unions, employee groups within various agencies. And I want to make it very clear, any civil servant who seeks to undermine an election by thwarting the lawful efforts of a duly authorized president of the United States should be investigated for subversion. This should not be viewed as some cute prank by people in a fraternity called the civil service. There should be subpoenas going to these individuals for their phone records, their emails, and they should be shut out of their offices during the investigation. They can be fully paid, and they can stay at home if they want. In fact, it may be better for the president if a lot of these resistors are forced to stay at home and not allowed in any building.
What can they do proactively to get to this? And I'm fascinated by what Sean Spicer, Lord knows, Sean Spicer is the bane of my existence. In many respects, we have a very loving brotherly feud going on. But I got to hand it to him. When Biden came in and deliberately and churlishly and just selfishly and obnoxiously fired Sean Spicer from an advisory board position at the Naval Academy. It was petty. It was just to please people on the left. But he fired Spicer and many other people who had received presidential appointments, something that you talk about the norms and unprecedented. No president has ever done this before. But through America First Legal, Spicer sued and got a judgment from a judge that said, oh, yeah, a president can do this. A president can fire anybody from the executive branch without any excuse. So the Trump administration now has a golden ticket, thanks to Biden. He should be able to fire whoever he wants. Is there anything wrong with them proactively going through? I know there's, tens of thousands, but going through and actually evaluating people who could, in fact, be potentially a problem here and could operate as a Vindman on day one.
There's no doubt about it. They can do that. And in fact, if they are properly set up, they should be able to vet individuals in the administration, especially anybody in a policymaking position, people who can affect the way policies are implemented in individual agencies. They are not without power. The president is the executive branch. So let nobody remember that. This is the unitary executive. All of these employees are representatives of the president. It may be that there are civil service laws that provide protections and all that. Those laws theoretically are unconstitutional, to the extent that they strip away from the executive, the president, the right to fire any civil servant for insubordination or for subversion. And by the way, test it. Don't wait.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you.
So
these laws, many of which were instituted post-World War II, and I think that Eisenhower is partly, you correct my history, but I know he tried to make the civil service and government jobs sort of mirror military levels of employment and such, and there were a lot of protections put in, and those got more robust as the years have gone on, of course. But this has never been tested, whether a president can just, I don't want to use the word arbitrarily, but what if it is arbitrary? What if a president just says, you know what, I want my people, I'm firing you? It's never been tested before?
No, the modern executive has allowed this to fester because Congress has become the babysitter of federal employee unions. Unionization is down in this country. Only about 5% of the private workforce is unionized. The biggest unionized workforce in America is in government, which was the biggest mistake that John Kennedy ever made, recognizing federal unions. Once you gave unions the authority to organize in the government, you gave them a veto over government policy. This has to end. Trump has to take the easy and simple step of simply firing anyone who gets in his way. There's nothing wrong with that. It's constitutional. He is the executive branch. And all of these protections are theoretically unconstitutional.
All right, Joe Digenova, stay there. We got more. We got commutations of death penalty verdicts, rulings that have just been made within the last hour by Biden. We've got the question of birthright citizenship that the incoming Trump administration has suggested they might challenge, and a whole lot more. Coming up. So Joe's going to give us his legal ruling on all of that in a moment. First, though, there's no two ways about it. It should be against the law, but traffic is a real thing. It's 7:15, WMAL Traffic and Weather. Every 10 minutes, first on the fives. Our legal traffic analyst is Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Thank you very much. All right, here we go.
Yeah, on his way out the door, Biden has now commuted 37 out of 40 death row inmates' death sentences. I know Patrice wants to get to that, and we will in a second, Patrice. But I also want to ask Joe Digenova, while we have him, about birthright citizenship. I know we discussed it several years ago when Trump sort of floated the idea of why is this the default? Why are we allowing this? Mark Levin, our colleague every evening here at 6 p.m. on WMAL, he's been beating the drum, I think, for over 10 years now, that this is a distortion of the 14th Amendment. It's, again, also never been tested. Is that right? If Trump comes in and says, yeah, enough with this birthright citizenship, I know people are going to raise holy hell about it, but we actually don't have a outright constitutional ruling on this, or do we? I know a lot of people point to this decision that was made having to do with a Chinese immigrant at the turn of the century. Joe, sort this out for us.
Birthright citizenship does not exist. It is a misreading of the case you just alluded to at the turn of the other century.
Yeah,
and
19th century.
It is a case that needs to be made, and the way to do it is to simply deny people certain rights just because they're born here. The case in the Supreme Court that you alluded to was a very different case. The person that the Supreme Court ruled had birthright citizenship for their children was a legal resident of the United States when birth citizenship was denied to his children. All of the people who are here illegally are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
Or
tourists.
Subject
to the jurisdiction. You're subject to the jurisdiction of the country you came from. Right. And therefore, you're not here legally, and your children cannot become citizens. It's a very simple argument. There is nothing in the Constitution and the 14th Amendment to do that. Everybody forgets. The 14th Amendment dealt with the citizenship of slaves, emancipated slaves. It had nothing to do with immigrants from China or any place else.
Interesting. Let's shift just a little bit. Larry teased it. More Biden commutations and pardons just this morning. 37 of the 40 men on federal death row have now had their sentences commuted. And President Biden said, quote, "Make no mistakes, I condemn these murders and I grieve for the victims of their acts, but I'm guided by my conscience and my experience as a public defender. I am more convinced than ever that we must stop the use of the death penalty at the federal level." Joe, does that make sense to you? I mean, isn't he the commander-in-chief and should be our protector-in-chief?
Well, first of all, he didn't do this. This was done by his staff. He's totally incompetent at this point. He can't function mentally. He's not doing this. But second of all, assuming for the sake of argument that he did do it, quote unquote, this is a further cover-up for the pardon of Hunter. This has nothing to do with his deeply held feelings about life and all that. He's in favor of abortion. He's a clown. I mean, to suggest that this is some sort of deeply held belief about the sanctity of human life and why the government should not be executing people. Well, then don't have wars, for heaven's sakes. You want a battlefield, you kill people all the time. I mean, this is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. But it's part of the 4-year lie that the Biden administration and the Harris administration carried on against the American people. People look at this. They see these statements being issued. A, they know it's not him because he's mentally incompetent. And second, they don't believe it because they know that this administration has done nothing but lie for 4 years with the permission of the mainstream media. All the people like Margaret Brennan and Martha Raddatz. Oh my God, Martha Raddatz. I mean, every time I see her, I just want to turn it off. I can't believe how awful how dumb she is, how purposefully stupid she is.
Biden also said in his statement, get this, in good conscience, I can't, give me a break. In good conscience, I cannot stand back and let a new administration resume executions that I halted. I can't let Trump enforce the law as written is really a good translation of that. And this whole idea that this has to do with there's nothing I abhor more than Catholics who wrap themselves in the doctrine of our church and our catechism by opposing the death penalty, but they are more than happy to kill unborn innocent babies, as Biden is. But if you even buy into this notion that this is his moral and ethical standing, then why let 3 people go forward with executions? This is either a question of morality or not. But he has made an exception for 3. Robert Bowers, who was convicted of the 2018 mass shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Dylan Roof from the mass killing of the Black Church in Charleston. And then the convicted Boston Marathon terrorist bomber. So those 3 high-profile cases, those can go forward to execution. So I guess his moral conscience doesn't stand in the way of that, Joe? It's absolutely incoherent, which makes me think Biden did make this decision.
Well, the bottom line is those decisions were made because those are politically unacceptable commutations.
That's right.
This is very simple. That involves blacks, Jews, and et cetera. And so the issue is he won't do it. The people around him wouldn't do it because they believe that would be just, quote unquote, too much. Of course,
it's classic Biden.
They don't understand that what they've already done is too much.
Yes.
But remember, he's not president. We haven't had a president for 4 years. This is the staff doing this. And I really hope that somebody in the aftermath of this does some, I don't know whether it should be Congress or a grand jury, but I believe that the exercise of this power by unelected bureaucrats for a president who is incompetent in light of the 25th Amendment, I think those are activities that warrant a grand jury. I hate to say it, but repeatedly, the more you look at the Biden administration, the more you see that it was a continuation of the crime family that the Bidens have brought to public service for more than 50 years.
Joe Digenova, Buon Natale. Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to everybody. God bless.
It's 7:24. It's 7:37. It's Christmas Eve. Coming up at 8:35, Susan Faricia is going to join us, national politics correspondent for the Washington Times. We're going to talk about the thwarting of a government shutdown, what the first week of January will bring, what this new Congress is going to look like. Will Speaker Johnson survive? All that stuff coming up. Good Lord, I'm just surrounded by rock and roll Christmas aficionados. I'm more of a, Andy Williams type, and you guys are rocking out. You're doing the Trump dance, though. I like that, Patrice Onwuka.
We are doing the Trump dance. Absolutely.
Yep.
This.
And
and we are about to talk football. I mean, obviously, the Trump dance is appropriate.
We are about to talk football. Let's go, because it is Christmas time, and that means it's a time for miracles. And a lot of cynics would say that for the Commanders to beat the Eagles, who arguably going into yesterday's game was, in fact, the best team in the NFC, if not the NFL, coming on 10 straight victories, including a victory over the Command Skins up in Philadelphia. Well, the victory itself would have been a miracle, but the way they did it, Trevor Matich, coming from behind the way they did, despite the fact that there were 5 turnovers, this was a historic win. Is this a Christmas miracle, or is this a signal that these guys, the Burgundy and Gold, are, in fact, ready for a good playoff run?
Well, Larry, I would say it's a Christmas miracle, except they've done it before. They had that Hail Mary earlier against the Bears to win the game. They've come back from behind before. So if you do it once, you're lucky. If you do it twice, you might be really lucky. But if you do it a lot, maybe you're just good at it. So it seemed to be a miracle in the moment, but boy, that miracle was sparked by a whole lot of great play from their young quarterback.
So I got to tell you, like most men, husbands, fathers, during this season, it's very busy. You've got a lot of demands, a lot of family. I missed the first part of this game. And I was checking on my phone the whole time, but I had family obligations for church and then shopping and, all that stuff. And I'm checking my phone, and I see what's happening, and I see that in the second half they're coming back. I made it back in time for the final half of the fourth quarter. And I got to tell you, Trevor, and this is the thing that's so new this season. We got the ball we were getting the ball with 2 minutes left on that kickoff after the Eagles took the lead. And I was 90% confident that Jaden Daniels was going to lead this team to victory. I mean, I wasn't even nervous. I knew he was going to do it.
Okay, why? Tell me why you knew he was going to do it.
He had, like you just said, first of all, he had done it before, number one. But number two, the way he has played this year, he has not played like a rookie. At no point has he seemed nervous. At no point has he panicked. At no point has he made stupid mistakes that even, 5, 6, 7-year veteran quarterbacks make. There's something different about this kid. And he not only made me, you could tell the team was confident, and they knew it.
See, now, if we saw that watching from the television, imagine the confidence he inspired in the huddle with his own teammates and on the sideline. See, that's the big deal. The quarterbacks I played with in college at BYU were all Americans, all of them. And it never bothered me when we fell behind because I knew they were going to bring us back. And that's the kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that Jaden Daniels gives to the Washington Commanders. And I think one of the plays that is maybe my favorite play of his for the game was something that will never show up on the highlights. They called a run-pass option, an RPO over to the right. But the receivers over there didn't get the message. So they were ready for the football. So Daniels drops back. He pulls the ball out of the running back's belly and went to go in his run-pass option. It was passed, but there was nobody. So instead of freaking out like a young quarterback can do and trying to force the ball somewhere or hold on to it and try to find something else and maybe take a sack and lose yardage, instead he said, okay, well, gee, the blocking on the run part of the run-pass option is right here. I'm just going to turn and run that way. So instead of a catastrophic mistake, he gained 2 yards. He left 3rd and 1, and they ended up throwing the game-winning touchdown from about that spot. Yeah. That moment when things broke down, when most young quarterbacks panic, is what you are talking about, Larry, that he has ice in his veins, and his teammates know it, and they respond.
Yeah. So, Trevor, can I throw a monkey wrench in this? Can I just ask that could it possibly be that some of yesterday's win is because Jalen Hurts was pulled out early with a concussion?
That's a great devil's advocate point, but here's how I would respond. The Commanders were down 13 points in the fourth quarter, even without Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts doesn't play defense, so now they've got to score in the fourth quarter. And keep in mind that the Eagles scored a couple of field goals in the fourth quarter. So it wasn't just 13 that they had to score. So what happens? Jaden Daniels leads 3 touchdown drives in the fourth quarter, including the game-winning touchdown with 6 seconds to go on a play that they practiced this week. And it materialized and unfolded on the pass route and the coverage exactly like it was in practice. That pass to Jamison Crowder. And so, I would say, the Eagles made some mistakes, and they did. They had a critical drop pass. They had some mistakes of their own. But the Commanders still had to score 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns to win this thing.
Against that defense. So, Trevor, I hate to get ahead of myself. There's 2 more games left, including a game against the Cowboys. But I got to ask, if the season ended today, the Commanders' reward for that great gutsy victory against the Eagles is to go up to Philadelphia and play them again in the first round. I don't want to overthink this, but aren't they better off actually losing these next 2 games, dropping down to the last slot, and going to L.A. to play the Rams?
Well, I see your point, but if you made that point and made it the most perfect way possible with a spreadsheet and graphics and a little movie and inspiring music, they would still never go for it. They'd say, we're going to try to win every game we possibly can, and then we'll take the playoffs as they are. But you're right, going up to Philly to try to reprise this thing would be a really difficult thing to do. But why not? Because remember, Philly's quarterback didn't play defense, and Daniels led those 3 fourth-quarter touchdown drives to win it.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, you know what? I'm looking at the brackets now, and I realized I'm a moron. Actually, that wouldn't put them in a better position. They got to win out. They got to win, and they got to hope Green Bay loses. Then they get the Rams, and Green Bay gets the Eagles. So I apologize. Everyone's yelling at the radio right now because, and as I said, I'm the first to call myself a moron when I do things like that. Either way, what a victory. Jaden Dan, I know that it's tough competition, but he's certainly in the conversation for Rookie of the Year, isn't he?
Yeah, he absolutely is, and it's not just because of his stats. It's not just because of how he elevated a bad franchise. It's how he is doing it with such style. He's winning games late.
And he had an injury, played through the injury. Yes, had a tough spell there, but he's come back. He's got grit. I'm all in. I'm excited. Trevor.
He's broken the curse, right? Can we say that now? He's broken the curse?
Not until we get a Super Bowl. Not until we get a Super Bowl.
No,
okay.
Because saying that now will reinstate the curse. That's the problem.
Oh, sorry, everybody.
Trust me, as a lifelong Lions fan, I am very familiar with curses. It never goes away. Trevor, Merry Christmas. Always love having you be a part of our program. Can't wait to talk to you after the Command Skins' next victory. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, guys.
It is 7:45. Don't ever say the curse is broken.
I'm sorry.
WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First down the 5. With Gemma Witten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
All right, thank you, guys.
This radio station, WMAL, was the longtime 3-decade-plus home of the greatest of them all, Rush Limbaugh. And
yes, of course.
We miss Rush on a daily basis, but especially Christmas time. His programs were legendary through the Christmas season. And so with a hat tip to Rush Limbaugh, who really was the first in media to point out when Democrats and media talking heads, teleprompter readers all sing from the same choir book. They clearly get the same talking points and the same memo, and it was so glaringly obvious over the weekend as the Democrats all adopted their brand new favorite word. Say it with me, Patrice. Oligarchy. Yes, it's an oligarchy now, which is kind of funny because right up until a minute and a half ago, I thought Trump winning the presidency was going to be a totalitarian, fascist, authoritarian regime. But now apparently that wasn't...
he's sharing some of his power.
Now it's an oligarchy, and it's an oligarchy that they're sharing with apparently Elon Musk. Well, we'll start with Van Jones on CNN using the language.
There are big fancy college words called oligarchy, plutocracy that folks tonight might want to look up. It's called rule by rich folks. And that's what we're dealing with. A bunch of rich folks, two rich people threw a fit online and threw the government upside down. That is not good.
Enough, Van. Thank you. Let's go to the thought leader and really the brains behind the Democratic Party.
The next Democratic president.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh, I don't think we're witnessing the start of an oligarchy. I think we are fully here. You literally have a completely unelected billionaire who has just taken over.
Yeah, you know what? She should look up before she tries to use big words like oligarchy, she should figure out how to properly use literally. But that's fine. I will overlook it.
She can't help herself.
It is remarkable to me. You heard Congressman over the week, as you know, Elon Musk sort of did, I'll admit, lead the conversation on his X platform about what was in the 1,500-page bill. You heard them literally saying out loud, "We can't govern like this. The people know what we're doing, and then we might end up losing re-election because they don't like what we've done. This is outrageous." That's what oligarchy looks like. I'll take it. But Patrice, is this going to work? This is the new...
No.
How can they shift from Trump is this all-controlling, maniacal authoritarian to Trump's not really in charge, Elon Musk is really in charge with other rich people?
They're just floating whatever they can get at. Remember, fascist has gone down in flames. So as we played earlier, John Fetterman said, no, stop using that term. So I think they're trying to find something that sounds scary. Ooh, oligarchy. You know, they're trying to dig up whatever they can find that will stick for the next 4 years. And I think they've landed on it, but it's not working. It is not giving, as the people say in the
Honestly,
culture. It's not giving.
I hear oligarchy and all I think is a pasta special at the mall with unlimited breadsticks, okay?
Thank you.
Sounds similar. Scott Jennings on CNN, by the way, had a pretty good response to Van Jones raising the O word. Let's go to Scott.
Well, if Van is concerned about unelected officials running the government, I would invite him to review the last 4 years of the Biden administration. Maybe pick up the Wall Street Journal this week. We've apparently had a president that's so diminished that his staff has been hiding it from the American people and making key decisions on behalf of our government, despite never having been elected to anything at all. So if you're concerned about it tonight, maybe take a look over the last 4 years. Look, I think ultimately all's well that ends well. The government did not shut down. We're not in any kind of crisis over the holidays here. And when the Republicans get sworn in January and Trump comes to the office on January the 20th, they're going to have to come together as a team and decide, are we going to work together or not? That's ultimately how you get things done in a legislative body.
And I'll just end with this. Unlike Van Jones and AOC, Scott Jennings and those of us who work on this program and at this station, we actually know people who have worked with Donald Trump. We have regular conversations with people who have worked with Donald Trump. We know people who were in the last administration and are going into this administration. I assure you, take it from me, Elon Musk is not directing Donald Trump's decisions or actions in any way whatsoever. If Donald Trump didn't want things to happen the way they just happened, they would not have happened. It's 7:53. Coming up, are we going to rename the Panama Canal the United States Canal? And what about Greenland? Can we call it Trumpland? We'll get to all that coming up next.